1. Emptiness and fullness. 2. Emptiness and fullness. Deep knowledge. Strong action. 3. Emptiness and fullness. Militarists avoid the full and strike the empty, so they first have to recognize emptiness and fullness in others and themselves. Master Sun, those who are first on the battlefield and await the opponents are at ease, those who are last on the battlefield and head into battle get worn out. Jiulin, those who first position themselves in an advantageous place and await opponents there are prepared, so the troops are relaxed. If the opponents are in an advantageous position, then you should not go to them, but withdraw your troops to another base, making it appear that you will not oppose their army. Opponents will then think that you have no strategy, and will come and attack you. Then you can turn things around and make opponents tired without wearing yourself out. 4. Emptiness and fullness. Master Sun, therefore good warriors cause others to come to them and do not go to others. Causing opponents to come to you should conserve your strength and wait for them, not going to opponents or tear of wearing yourself out. Zhang, if you make opponents come to fight, then their force will always be empty. If you do not go to fight, then your force will always be full. This is the art of emptying others and filling yourself. Master Sun, what causes opponents to come of their own accord is the prospect of gain. What discourages opponents from coming is the prospect of harm. Ho Yangzi, lure them with something to gain, and opponents will be tired while you are at ease. Zhang, the only way to get opponents to come to you is to lure them with gain. The only way to ensure that opponents will not get to you is to harm what they care about. 5. Emptiness and fullness. Cao, to bring them to you, lure them with gain. To keep them from getting to you, attack where they will be sure to go to the rescue. If you can cause them to run while you hold an essential pass, you can make it impossible for opponents to get to you. As it is said, one cat at the hole, and 10,000 mice dare not come out, one tiger in the valley, and 10,000 deer cannot pass through. Master Sun, so when opponents are at ease, it is possible to tire them. When they are well fed, it is possible to starve them. When they are at rest, it is possible to move them. Gao, you cause them trouble with some affair, you cut off their supply routes to starve them, you attack what they like and appear where they will go, thus causing opponents to have to go to the rescue. 6. Emptiness and fullness. Li Quan, you attack unexpectedly, causing opponents to become exhausted just running for their lives. You burn their supplies and raze their fields, cutting off their supply routes. You appear at critical places and strike when they least expect it, making them have to go to the rescue. The arts of starving an opponent do not stop at cutting off supply lines. In the late 6th century, Yuan Huaji led an armed force to attack Li Mi. Li Mi knew that Huaji was short on supplies, so he feigned conciliation in order to wear out his troops. Huaji was delighted, and fed his soldiers all they wanted, expecting that Li Mi was going to supply them. Subsequently the food ran out, and the generals from Li Mi's army who had pretended to join up with Huaji went back to Li Mi's camp with their troops. This finally led to Ruiji's defeat. 7. Emptiness and fullness. Master Sun, appear where they cannot go, head for where they least expect you. To travel hundreds of miles without fatigue, go over land where there are no people. Gao, make it impossible for the enemy to get there to the rescue. Appear where there is an opening and strike at a gap, avoid where they are guarding, hit where they are not expecting it. Ghen Hao, striking at an open gap does not only mean where the opponent has no defense. As long as the defense is not strict, the place is not tightly guarded, the generals are weak and the troops are disorderly, the supplies are scarce and the forces are isolated, if you face them with an orderly and prepared army, they will fall apart in front of you. This way you do not need to labor and suffer, for it is as if you were traveling over unpopulated territory. 8. Emptiness, and fullness. Master Sun, to unfailingly take what you attack, attack where there is no defense. For unfailingly secure defense, defend where there is no attack. Do Mu, if they are alert on their eastern flank, strike on their western flank. Lure them on from the front, strike them from behind. Li Quan, it is easy to take over from those who have not thought ahead. Ghen How, not figure on opponents not attacking, worry about your own lack of preparation. When you can attack anywhere and defend everywhere, your political, military, strategy is complete. Wang Shi, attack their gaps, incompetence on the part of the political, military, leadership, lack of training among the troops, insubstantiality in fortifications, lack of strictness in preparations, inability to effect rescues, shortages of food, psychological disunity. Defend with fullness, competence in the political, military, leaders, excellence in the soldiers, solidity in fortifications, strictness in preparation, ability to effect rescues, sufficiency of food, psychological unity. 9. Emptiness, and fullness. Zhang Yu, those who are good on the attack maneuver in the heights of the skies, making it impossible for opponents to prepare for them. If no one can prepare for you, then where you attack is unguarded. Those who are good on the defense hide in the depths of the earth, making it impossible for opponents to fathom them. If you are unfathomable, then what you guard is not attacked by opponents. Master Sun, so in the case of those who are skilled in attack, their opponents do not know where to defend. In the case of those skilled in defense, their opponents do not know where to attack. Gao Gao, this means true information is not leaked. Jiulin, when directives are carried out, people are sincerely loyal, preparations for defense are firmly secured, and yet you are so subtle and secretive that you reveal no form, opponents are unsure, their intelligence is of no avail. Metyeokan, those good at attack do not divulge their operational secrets, those good at defense prepare thoroughly, without gaps. 10. Emptiness, and fullness. Master Sun, be extremely subtle, even to the point of formlessness. Be extremely mysterious, even to the point of soundlessness. Thereby you can be the director of the opponent's fate. Du Mu, the subtle is stillness, the mysterious is movement. Stillness is defense, movement is attack. Whether opponents live or die depends on you, so you are as though director of their fate. Do you, this means being so subtle as to be imperceptible, and to be able to change suddenly like a mysterious spirit. Metyeokan, formlessness means being so subtle and secret that no one can spy on you. Soundlessness means being so mysteriously swift that no one notices you. Master Sun, to advance irresistibly, push through their gaps. To retreat elusively, outspeed them. 11. Emptiness, and fullness. Ho Yangzi, if your forces push through the opponent's gaps as they move forward and take advantage of speed when they retreat, then you can overcome the opponent while the opponent cannot overcome you. Zhang Yu, at a standoff, if you rush in and strike when you see a gap, how can the enemy fend you off? Having gained the advantage, you retreat, hastening back to your stronghold for self-defense, then how can the enemy pursue you? Political, military, conditions are based on speed, come like the wind, go like lightning, and opponents will be unable to overcome you. Master Sun, therefore when you want to do battle, even if the opponent is deeply entrenched in a defensive position, he will be unable to avoid fighting if you attack, where he will surely go to the rescue. Gao Gao and Li Quan, cut off their supply routes, guard their return routes, and attack their civilian leadership. Du Mu, if you are on your home territory and the opponents are invaders, then cut off their supplies and guard their return routes. If you are on the opponent's home ground, then attack the civilian leadership. 12. Emptiness, and fullness. Master Sun, when you do not want to do battle, even if you draw a line on the ground to hold, the opponent cannot fight with you because you set him off on the wrong track. Li Quan, set opponents off on the wrong track by baffling them so that they cannot fight with you. Du Mu, this means that when opponents come to attack you, you do not fight with them but rather set up a strategic change to confuse them and make them uncertain, deflecting them from their original intention to attack, make them reluctant fight with you. Zhang Yu, when you are on your home ground and are well supplied compared to the number of soldiers you have, while opponents are on alien territory and have little food compared to their number, then it is to your advantage not to fight. If you want to be sure opponents will not dare come to do battle with you even though you are not heavily fortified, let them see a setup that confuses them and deflects their course. For example, when Sima Yi was going to attack Zhuge, Zhuge took down his flags and put away his battle drums, opened the gates and swept the road. Yi suspected an ambush, so he withdrew his forces and fled. 13. Emptiness, and fullness. Master Sun, therefore when you induce others to construct a formation while you yourself are formless, then you are concentrated while the opponent is divided. Zhang Yu, what is orthodox to you make opponents see as unorthodox, what is unorthodox to you make them see as orthodox. This is inducing others to construct a formation. To be able to use unorthodox as orthodox and use the orthodox as unorthodox, changing in a whirl, making yourself unfathomable to opponents, is being formless. Once the opponent's formation is seen, you then mass your troops against it. Since your form is not revealed, the opponent will surely divide up his forces for security. Master Sun, when you are concentrated into one while the opponent is divided into 10, you are attacking at a concentration of 10 to 1, so you outnumber the opponent. 14. Emptiness, and fullness. Zhang Yu, seeing where the enemy is solid and where the enemy is insubstantial, you do not go to the trouble of elaborate preparations and therefore are concentrated into one garrison. The enemy, on the other hand, not seeing your form, therefore divides up to cover numerous points so you with your whole force strike individual fragments of the enemy. Thus you inevitably outnumber them. Master Sun, if you can strike few with many, you will thus minimize the number of those with whom you do battle. Du Mu, while being deeply entrenched and highly barricaded, not allowing any information about yourself to become known. Go out and informlessly attacking and taking unfathomably. Harry and confuse enemies so that they divide their troops in fear. Trying to cover themselves on all sides. It is like climbing a high mountain to spy on a citadel seeing out from behind a veil. You know all about the disposition of the enemy personnel while the enemy cannot figure out your offense or defense. Therefore you can be unified while the enemy is divided. The power of those who are united is whole, while the power of those who are divided is reduced. By striking diminished power with whole power, it is possible always to win. 15. Emptiness, and fullness. Master Sun. Your battleground is not to be known, for when it cannot be known, the enemy makes many guard outposts, and since multiple outposts are established, you only have to do battle with small squads. Gao Gao, when your form is concealed, the enemy is in doubt, and so divides up his company to be on guard against you. This means that enemy groups are small and easy to hit. Wang XL, don't let the enemy know where you will clash. For if they know they will mass their strength to resist you. Master Sun, so when the front is prepared, the rear is lacking, and when the rear is prepared the front is lacking. Preparedness on the left means lack on the right, preparedness on the right means lack on the left. Preparedness everywhere means lack everywhere. Do you? This means that when troops are on guard in many places, they are perforce scattered into small bands. 16. Emptiness, and fullness. Master Sun, the few are those on the defensive against others, the many are those who cause others to be on the defensive against themselves. Mel Yaokan, the more defenses you induce your enemy to adopt, the more impoverished your enemy will be. Master Sun. So if you know the place and time of battle, you can join the fight from 1,000 miles away. If you do not know the place and time of battle, then your left flank cannot save your right cannot save your left, your vanguard cannot save your rear guard, and your rear guard cannot save your vanguard, even in a short range of a few to a few dozen miles. 17. Emptiness, and fullness. Do you, the ancient philosopher Master Guan said, go forth armed without determining strategy, and you will destroy yourself in battle. Master Sun, according to my assessment, even if you have many more troops than others, how can that help you to victory? Li Quan, if you do not know the place and time of battle, even though your troops outnumber others, how can you know whether you will win or lose? Master Sun, so it is said that victory can be made. Meng Shi, if you cause opponents to be unaware of the place and time of battle, you can always win. Master Sun, even if opponents are numerous, they can be made not to fight. Jiulin, even though opponents be numerous, if they do not know the conditions of your troops and you constantly make them rush about trying to cover themselves, they will not have time to formulate battle plans. 18. Emptiness, and fullness. Zhang Yu, divide their forces, do not let them press forward at once with coordinated strength, then how could anyone fight with you? Master Sun, so assess them to find out their plans, both the successful ones and the failures, incite them to action in order to find out the patterns of their movement and rest. Meng Shl, assess opponents' conditions, observe what they do, and you can find out their plans and measures. Chen Hao, do something for or against them, making opponents turn their attention to it, so that you can find out their patterns of aggressive and defensive behavior. 19. Emptiness, and fullness. Do Mu, stir opponents up, making them respond to you, then you can observe their forms of behavior, and whether they are orderly or confused. The political, military, wizard Wu Qi devised this strategy for assessing generals: have brave young men lead crack troops on strikes and run away after skirmishing, without being punished for running away. Then observe the enemy's behavior. If there is orderly rule, and the enemy does not give chase to the fleeing troops and does not try to take advantage to grab what it can, this means the general has a strategy. On the other hand, if the enemy behaves like a mob, giving chase in total confusion and greedily trying to plunder, you can be sure that the directives of the generals are not carried out, so you can attack them without hesitation. Master Sun, induce them to adopt specific formations, in order to know the ground of death and life. 20. Emptiness, and fullness. Li Quan. When you break ranks and set up guerrilla squads, you may lay down your banners and drums. Your signals and symbols oil political, military, organization, to use the appearance of weakness in order to induce them to adopt a specific form. Or you may set up false arrays of campfires and banners, to use the appearance of strength in order to induce them to adopt a specific form. If you die by going to them and live by getting them to come to you, this way death and life come about depending on the ground. Do Mu. The ground of death and life is the battleground. If you go to the enemy on a ground of death you will live, while if you leave the enemy on a ground of life you will die. This means that you use many methods to confuse and disturb enemies to observe the forms of their response to you, after that you deal with them accordingly, so you can know what sort of situations mean life and what sort of situations mean death. 21. Emptiness, and fullness. Master Sun test them to find out where they are sufficient and where they are lacking. Do Mu, compare where you are sufficient with where the enemy is sufficient, compare where you are lacking with where the enemy is attacking. Wang XL, compare the strength of the enemy with your own, and you will know where there is sufficiency or lack. After that you can assess the advantages of attack or defense. Master Sun, therefore the consummation of forming an army is to arrive at formlessness. When you have no form, undercover espionage cannot find out anything, intelligence cannot form a strategy. Zhang Yu, First you use emptiness and fullness to induce the enemy to adopt a specific formation while remaining unfathomable to the enemy, so that ultimately you reach formlessness. Once you have no perceptible form, you leave no traces to follow, so spies cannot find any chinks to see through and those in charge of intelligence cannot put any plans into operation. 22. Emptiness and fullness. Master Sun, victory over multitudes by means of formation is unknowable to the multitudes. Everyone knows the form by which I am victorious, but no one knows the form by which I ensure victory. Melyeokan, the multitudes know when you win, but they do not know that it is based on the formations of the enemy. They know the traces of attainment of victory, but do not know the abstract form that makes for victory. Li Quan, victory in war is apparent to all, but the science of ensuring victory is a mysterious secret, generally unknown. Master Sun, therefore victor in war is not repetitious but adapts its form endlessly. Li Quan, determining changes as appropriate, do not repeat former strategies to gain victory. Du Mu, whatever formations opponents may adopt, from the beginning I adapt to them to attain victory. Master Sun, political, military, formation is like water. The form of water is to avoid the high and go to the low. The form of a political, military, force is to avoid the full and attack the empty. The flow of water is determined by the earth. The victory of a political, military, force is determined by the opponent. 23. Emptiness and fullness. Li Quan. How can you ensure victory if not on the basis of the enemy 5 own posture? A light brigade cannot hold out long, so if you keep it under siege it will inevitably lose. A heavy brigade will unfailingly respond to a provocation and expose itself. If the opposing army is angry, shame it. If the army is strong, get it to relax. If the opposing general is proud, humiliate him. If the general is greedy, bait him. If the general is suspicious, spy on him right back. Therefore the manner of victory is determined according to the enemy. Master Sun, so a political, military, force has no constant formation, water has no constant shape. The ability to gain victory by changing and adapting according to the opponent is called genius. 24. Emptiness and fullness, working applied rules that govern victory. 25. Emptiness and fullness. Victory. Victory. Victory.